and then to arrange for a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or the IMF or one of the sister organizations. But the money would not actually go to the country itself. The country would collateralize the loan with its resource, but the money would go directly to our own corporations, big engineering companies like Bechtel and Halliburton and Brown and Root, and my own company would get a piece of the action to build infrastructure projects in the country, things like power plants and industrial parks and highways, things that benefited a few rich people in those countries, as well as making huge profits for our own corporations. For a long time, I thought I was doing the right thing, as many people in that business do. But over time, I began to see that those statistics, GDP, gross domestic product, and other statistics are very skewed to the rich. And so the rich were getting rich, but the poor were getting poorer because money was being diverted from health care, education, and other social services, and just basic foods and supplies to pay off the loans. I should mention one other thing, that the presidents of these countries knew that if they accepted the loans, they were putting their countries deep into debt, but they were going to get wealthy off this. Their families were going to benefit because they owned the businesses, they owned the industries, they owned the things that were helped by electricity and so forth. But there was another incentive for them, and that was that what we call jackals were in the background. And these are CIA assets usually, who overthrow governments or assassinate their leaders.
John Perkins is not the only one that spoke about this. Many others say that developing countries which are in heavy debt may go through coups and assassinations as a result of not wanting to play by these rules. And they say that these institutions and companies that lend countries have thousands of employees, and some jobs there are to manufacture and manage such crises. I reached Vincent Bevins, author of The Jakarta Method, a book which discusses the American intervention and collusion during the mass killings of Indonesians by their government in the 60s. I am sure he has something to say about this.
Hi, Vincent. Are there figures like economic hitmen, really? Ones that force abusive contracts on nations and countries?
What I can say is that in the second half of the 20th century, it was absolutely true that a lot of countries in the global south, countries that used to be part of something called the Third World Movement, ended up saddled with a lot of debt, which became unsustainable. And the fact that they were saddled with debt and the fact that the debt became unsustainable has a lot to do with institutions and actors based in the global north.
So are these institutions and actors from the north economic hitmen? Who is benefiting from this?
There were a lot of people that did benefit from these crises, whether or not they were financial actors or key players in international banks. I think what's important is that it absolutely happened and it benefited a small group of rich people in the global north.
And do you think that these practices are still in place today?
It's now fairly well recognized that the prescriptions the IMF was going around the world and handing out to indebted and poor countries were often very destructive. The IMF has even gone back on a lot of what it said in the past was the right medicine for a country that, quote unquote, had problems, even if those problems might have been generated by the system itself. But at the time, nobody was questioning this. And the fact that the IMF 20, 30 years later says, oops, we actually might have ruined half the world's countries doesn't change the fact that we're still on the path today that was created by those actions generations ago.
From an economic perspective, and even capitalistic one, wouldn't you say that keeping everybody healthy with good purchase power to engage in the global economy is better for the whole world than crippling them by loans that they cannot repay?
This is the paradox at I think, the heart of liberal ideology, right? Because one would believe, based on the tenets of economics practiced in the English-speaking world, and one would believe, based on the ideals of liberalism in general, that it would be better for everyone to make sure the countries in the global south are growing just as fast and as robustly as any other country. But what we have seen is that did not happen over the last 70 years, and countries in the global north are still doing just fine.